Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for this webinar. My name is Lee. I'm a business development manager here at Argentum. And today I'm joined by Ishai Shamir, our CEO. And today we'll be having a discussion about different aspects of timing when applying for funding. So please feel free to ask questions throughout using the chat, and we'll try to answer them at the end. So welcome, Ishai.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks for having me.
So today, basically, as I said, we're going to be talking about different aspects of timing. So what does that mean? What are we talking about when we're talking about timing? In other words, what are the components of the timing that we're talking about?
Well, first of all, it's all about timing, and I must share with you behind the scenes info that we had an internet crash a few minutes ago. So timing is important for internet crashes, so we are a bit shaken, but we will still try to make this webinar work in the best quality that we can. To your question, you asked me about what aspects are we going to speak about in about timing, about this dimension of time. So we will start with, if you can go to the next slide, we will start with discussing, is it good timing regarding company maturity? Is it a good stage to start applying for research grant, for product development grants? Next, we will discuss terms, European funding terms, TRL and BRL, the technology readiness level and the business readiness level, which is also project-wise, is it a good time to start applying for funding? If we previously discussed about the company's stage, now we are talking about the technology readiness and the business readiness of a product. Then we will discuss deadlines. Deadlines are important in the aspect of times. We need to prepare for deadlines. We need to work in advance to meet the deadline, so it is important. And last, we will discuss the geopolitical effects on the funding programs. Is it a good timing for a specific topic to approach grant or not, etc.
Okay.
Yes, this is the problems that we ran into that I started with. So
yeah, so definitely all about timing.
Yeah.
So thanks for that introduction. So following on basically from what you mentioned, could you please talk about, tell us a little bit about the stages of the company in terms of its funding development and its BRL that you just mentioned?
Well, the company maturity, and as you can see in this next slide, the value of the famous startup value of death. Well, a startup company has stages which are fluid in their definition, but we usually speak about the pre-seed stage of a company, the seed stage of a company, and then the funding rounds, and then we kind of align them with the research development, prototyping, and commercialization time. And the thing is that you need the funding the most, and you need to climb over or jump over or pass this valley of death with the help of investors, clients, and grants, which is why we are here. And this is and you need to somehow move beyond this valley of death and become successful, profitable, etc. So let's start with the pre-seed stage, when you have just an idea. Well, this is a time when you need the funding the most, but you're not right in the time to apply for substantial grants. There are acceleration programs, small grants that can be good for this stage, but you do not possess, and I call them grantable assets. grantable assets such as patents, such as verification of your idea in the market, clients, letters of intent, team, business plan. All of these assets are really required to make you a candidate with high chances of winning a substantial grant. So you have the pre-seed, which I said this is relevant for small grants, not something substantial. And then you have the seed stage and the round A stage. So my best tip is to start apply for grants when you're on the way up, when you are starting your major funding round, or just ending your major funding round, which can sound a little counterintuitive, because this is when you have the funding, well, at least some of the funding to go on. But this is the time when you are the most attractive to funding agencies. So this is the best time to apply. And this brings a lot of positive energy into the company. It delays the next funding round, and it slows down or minimizes your dilution for the next funding round. Your ongoing investors will be happy to win grants and will support you in that, because this also limits their dilution going forward.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So,
and one last tip before we move on to the next subject. The best advice that I can give you out of this content is to not use grants as your last when you see that your runway is getting slower. You need to count on the grant in order to move on. This is usually not good advice, and usually the grants will not be successful when you apply, when it's your last resort, your last action before closing. Sorry to be such dismal, but this is a great tip.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if I look at that tip, then if you're saying, let's say a company has already raised funding, okay, and then so why do you think it should consider applying for a grant? Well, does that have something to do with timing, with, like you said, like the round A, or is it something to do with after investment? Is that a positive time?
Yes, as I said, the best time is when you have all these assets, and usually you generate good funding when you have these assets. They look for the same thing, the grants and the investors, almost the same thing. But the funding mechanism will try to look at the risky components in your development. Right. Whereas the investor will try to look on the less risky parts of your development. So, for example, if you have two products, let's say medical products, one is in clinical trials and the other one is just in preclinical trials, then the investor will want to cover the clinical trials, because this is pushing him or placing him closer to meet his money again. An FDA approval will raise his value. It can generate income from customers, whereas the preclinical stage is a little risky. So he would want you to focus on your clinical trials. The grants will want this risk, so you may want to focus on that. So in the timing of the project development, you should you should pick out the riskier ones. And this is why it's also good to have grants when you finished your funding round.
Okay, great. So I think that leads me on to another question of then, so we've decided to apply for a grant, let's say a company, and then what would you say the aspects of timing are that are present in the grant submission process itself? So, for example, would a company need to form a layout of future business development goals and trajectory, like in the EIC, for example?
Well, what I would recommend is to leverage and capitalize on already existing strategies.
Mm-hmm.
It is not advised to take a grant, well, um, start a project thanks to a grant,
Mm-hmm.
because then when in the proposal you will not have enough evidence, track record, knowledge of the market, set business goals. You need to use your own assets to win the grant. And the best thing you can say to a grant evaluator is saying, this is my focus. This is the reason the company exists, and I'm going to do this project with or without you. But without your support, I'm going to do it slower. And this is the
Mm-hmm.
element of time. It will take me
Yeah.
longer to uh, get there, to get to the final point, to get to the market, to finish my development. And this will open a window for competitors to gain a first mover advantage. So this can risk the entire thing. This is the best way you can say to an evaluator.
Okay, and this would be looking at, let's say, the business strategy. And then what would you recommend? Is it similar in terms of, how should certain deadlines dictate a company's funding strategy? So obviously we were looking at a company's strategy previously with regards to grant application. And now would I base that on the funding strategy as well?
Well, if a company decided to include non-dilutive funding grants in their funding strategy, they should work with a preset strategy. The reason is that if you don't have a preset strategy, you'll always be surprised by the grant and will know that will know about it, or make the decision to apply for it too late.
Mm-hmm.
And the element of time plays a crucial role here in the competitiveness over the funding. These are highly competitive uh, funding mechanisms that more time can really help you get funded. For example, our statistics shows that if you take 3 months to prepare an EAC accelerator project, you have 50% chance of winning. This is our
Right.
um, statistics. Usually reality plays a role here,
Mm-hmm.
and you start later. It takes 2 months, and you have only 2 months, which is also good statistics there. But 1 month will be just filling out the proposal and not really thinking strategically or competitively about things. Another thing is that in the eye of the funding authorities, they see the task of writing a proposal as your only task in the company. They don't
Right.
take into account that you are managing all lots of other important stuff, and therefore they tend to publish the funding options um, a little late, some of them even less than a month before the deadline.
Wow.
So it takes some knowledge, experience, and management to have these grants on your mind and waiting for them to be published before they are published, and
Mm-hmm.
starting to prepare for it before they are published. And this gives an important competitive advantage over the other proposal. This is one element of our submission plan that is very important, to have an organized plan and trying to stick to this plan in order to create the best proposals, and use resources
Mm.
in your most efficient way.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks. That's really informative. So going back, we've looked at, you mentioned the company maturity in terms of the BRL. We spoke a little bit about the deadline. So I'd like to focus now on the TRL. So would you be able to talk to us a little bit about a company's TRL, and how can one tell the difference between the 9 levels?
Well, I think we prepared, yes, a slide for it. TRL is my favorite subject. And
Mhm.
let's look at the words, the terminology they use. TRL 1 basic principles. This is science, concept
Mhm.
formulated, experimental proof of concept, lab. So I consider TRL 1 to 4 as the science.
Right.
It is science that stems out technologies. Now, TRL 5 and 6 speaks technology, technology and relevant environment. What is a relevant environment? What is a technology? Different questions. And then TRL 7 and 8 and 9 speak about prototypes and systems. Now, I
Mhm.
look at this not as a straight line, but as a tree, like a tree of options. You have science, and science can stem out several technologies, and technology can create several products, and you can play along the branches of this tree according to the requirements of the grant. So if a grant requires at least TRL 6 and you are already in TRL 9, you can choose a different system to apply with
Oh,
and
nice.
apply with a different system, and then you are back to TRL 6, but because the system prototype is still not demonstrated in operational environment, a different prototype has been. So an example, if you have a medical device, imaging technology that and you have and this is your technology, is a novel imaging technology, and you applied it to image the heart muscle, and you have done great, and you have a system complete and qualified. You're TRL 9, you're starting selling this project, but now you want to look at the lungs, to image the
Mhm.
lungs. So it means that you don't have a prototype for the lab for the lungs demonstrated in operational environment. You have the technology demonstrated in relevant environment. The imaging
Right.
technology is demonstrated in relevant environment, but the system prototype is not yet there. So you can play along this line. Now, another play that you can have here is the relevant environment. Let's say a medical device, like something you need to, a minimal invasive medical device that includes some operations on the human body, like
Mhm.
installing something in the human body or surgically. Then, okay, you have tried this in pigs. Okay, in animals, in large
Okay.
animals, and pigs. Well, pigs um, in different organs are very close to humans, and you tried it there. Is this TRL 5? Is this a relevant environment for my innovation? No one knows. And the answer that
Mhm.
the EU is giving the evaluator is saying it's up to your just judgment. We always say, what is the risk of moving from this relevant environment that you mentioned, the pig, to the human body? What is the risk in this
Mm.
transfer? And if this risk is low, then this can pass on as a relevant environment. But if it's going from mouse to the human body and it's regarding immunology, there's a lot of it's a different level of risk altogether, so it will not count as. One last thing I want to say
Interesting.
about TRL and the timing is that don't give up if your TRL doesn't necessarily mean that you're right. We've seen a
Mm.
lot and plenty of projects winning with the wrong TRL.
Yeah,
Why
that
and
was
why
going to be
is
my
that?
next point.
Okay, and why is that? Because TRL is only one out of 13 evaluation criteria. So you can be great at everyone else and mediocre at the TRL, you can still win the grant. That's
Yeah.
that's how it happens, and it shows. We've seen a lot of TRL4 projects winning an EIC Accelerator grant.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Thank you for mentioning that. So I think, what you've mentioned, if I can sort of summarize for myself and for companies out there, is that you're saying that because the extensitivity of the TRL is so flexible in the sense we can take the same technology, apply it to a different environment. But like you said, because there are so many evaluating options or requirements for grants, that just because we might be a TRL 4 doesn't mean we can't go for an application that's a higher TRL and vice versa. So I think that's really important to bear in mind for companies out there when we are looking for grants. I think, there's so many effects. Like you said, there are different levels of TRLs. There's the BRL, we've got deadlines. There's so much to take into consideration. And when we're looking at timing, we also touched upon, geopolitical influence. So I'm sure that budgets and topics for areas of calls are obviously inevitable under any situation. How would the geopolitical influence these areas, so the geopolitical aspects that exist, what influence do they have?
Well, I think the most important things to know about timing and geopolitical effects is to understand the different funding mechanism responds in different time, in different delays. National funding bodies will respond very quickly to major events, while the EU, it will take more let's say more.
Okay.
And I don't know why, but then I don't know if it's right or not, but this is what happens. For example, I think it's the best example of what happens and what we can learn from it. In the beginning of 2020, when the world didn't know anything about the coronavirus, or people in China knew about it, but not in Europe. The EU decided that its main geopolitical event that affects the funding should be the climate change, environmental crisis. So they started this Green Deal initiative, and one of the actions within this initiative was to take one of the EIC Accelerator cutoff dates and make it exclusively for Green Deal projects, meaning projects that aims to battle climate change and pollutions, etc. And it was nice. It was in May 2020, but in February 2020, we had another geopolitical event. It was the coronavirus, and it changes our life completely. So apart from one drop in the ocean program that the EU have released very quickly, there was nothing in there. So we had people struggling with Corona, writing grants only about climate change during the greatest hit of the pandemic. And this is interesting, showing you how quickly the EU is not responding, and at the same time you had wonderful local funding mechanisms in the countries themselves. Right now, when you look at the health or the Horizon Europe Health program for 2023 and 2024, you have like 6-7 grants directed to pandemic preparedness. So now
we're learning from it.
It's sinking. Yeah. So wow. I don't know if they did good or not good. This is not my position to say, but it's interesting to know, and this is something to build your strategy on.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, thanks very much. So let's say that, I'm ready. I have a strategy in place, my funding strategy's out there, and I'm so ready that I'm already in the process of applying for a grant. I've taken into consideration all this timing. I've gone ahead, I'm applying for a grant. Is it possible to apply for another?
This is again a question of time. Do you have the time to write another grant, even with a consultant? Most companies cannot handle writing two major grants at the same time. But some grants require less, some proposal requires less time investment, less resources. They are shorter. Some proposals need more and needs your entire focus. The best way to go around this this barrier is to try to use the Horizon Europe consortiums as partners, not as a leader. And this relieves a lot of the time burden that you have. So you can, at the same time, join. Record is for one of our clients joining four different consortium proposals at the same time while doing an EIC accelerator project.
Right.
Joining a consortium is great. It's kind of a win-win. You invest less time, and then the coordinator has to invest most of the resources to make good competitive proposal. And you are answering to the coordinator. You give him what you need, which is much simpler than applying for an unknown evaluator or unknown group of evaluators.
Okay, great, fantastic. Thanks very much. So I think we've covered all the areas, but I would like to know just, one last piece of advice about timing. What would it be?
One last tip of advice. I said it before, I think. It's not to use it as a last resort.
So that's really key.
Yeah, prepare ahead. Use perseverance. Like, don't give up on you failed first and second time, because the rewards are awesome.
Okay, fantastic. Great. Well, thank you very much. I've definitely learned a lot myself here. So we've got a bit of time left. Let's have a look at some questions that we've received today.
Yes, great questions today, by the way. Would you like to read them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we've got here a question about TRL4. So it's technology validated in a lab. So it says, somebody says here that they're generating therapeutic molecules with AI. They have validation for relevant existing data without any lab, and the approach works. Are they TRL4 or 5? Is it that easy?
Well, let's do this exercise. What does TRL5 means? Lee, can you go back to the TRL slide? No, go forward. Yes, TRL means technology validated in relevant environment. So you have a validation from what you're writing, but is this validation considered relevant environment? Okay, so what is the operational environment of the solution? Where does it need to work? Who is your client? What is his environment? How it will be used? Now, if you think that the environment you use today is relevant compared to the operational environment where this technology will be used in the end, then you are TRL5. And it's probably it's up to the evaluator to say yes or no, but still they you can claim it, you can explain it for them to tick the V there and move on to score the other 13 evaluation criteria.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I hope that answered your question. We have a couple of people asking about the 13 grant evaluation criteria. I mean, I don't think we can go into all 13, but are there maybe a couple of others that you could mention
I don't remember them by heart. I can tell you, well, we are discussing different types of grants. The 13 was the EAC Accelerator before 2020. I think it didn't change much, except for one problematic valuation criteria that is now removed. That is the infamous non-bankability one. So now it is off, just saying, just asking the need for funding, about the need, why do you need it? So it's usually European grants, and actually all grants follow the same criteria, the excellence, impact, and implementation that are within themselves. Now the EAC Accelerator is giving them different names, but it's the same idea. It's your work plan, it's your technology, and it's your market potential. And within them, there are sub-criteria. These are the 13 sub-criteria that I spoke about. It changes from proposal to proposal, from different funding mechanisms. It keeps the main excellence, impact, implementation in place. So this is even when we pre-evaluate client or a project, trying to understand whether it's a good idea to apply for a certain grant, we go over these three main ones. So we ask ourselves, is this technology impressive? Is it differentiator, how it is compared to the state of the art? What is the TRL? And then this is the excellence in impact. What's the impact? Like, what's the general global impacts that we can claim about this technology? And what are the chances that this impact will be realized in real life? Like, does this company know how to get to the market? Do they know who the competitors are? Do they have a plan? How well they know the market? This is impact. And then in implementation, we check that there is good balance in the work plan, and we also check that the team is good enough to provide to actually create the suggested plan, follow the suggested plan.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we're actually run out of time for today. There are a couple more questions here, but we will answer you personally. So later on, our marketing team will send up a follow-up email where you can able to book a call. Please feel free to book one-on-one sessions via the link. We'll also, this has been recorded, so we'll always have the link available. And thank you very much, Ishai. It was very, very informative. Again, I reiterate, I learned a lot. And I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you all for your time today.
Thank you. And thank everyone that joined us.